Dimitri Ciglione, a 33-year-old native New Yorker, has been producing fine sculpture and woodwork in Tucson for the past 10 years. In the winter of 1986, he was commissioned to carve what would prove to be one of his most ambitious jobs to date, a set of 3 sculptured columns of wood. Dimitri comments on how the project started.
Last summer, 1986, I received a call from an interior designer friend of mine, John Bissell, and he asked me over the phone if I felt like doing some totem poles. And after clearing my throat, I said, well, sure, let's check it out. So a meeting was arranged a few days later with the client. And went out to her house, which was in the midst of a major addition. And we discussed the totem poles. What these were to be were support columns for 3 points around the house, supporting part of the roof overhang. And we went on to discuss as far as style and direction and all of that, and pretty much we came up with the idea of an organic floral type direction. I was very intimidated and apprehensive about it. I wanted the commission, but I was a little nervous about it. And I talked to a lot of people, just try to get different ideas and feedbacks and all of that. And I guess somewhere around that point I would sketch here and there, very crude sketches. I don't spend a lot of time sketching. It's not the quickest, easiest process for me. And but it's important to start developing ideas. And as I started to, I guess the ideas started to materialize or sort of repeat themselves, I felt at that point I can start doing some modeling. The model I worked out along with the sketches and knowing where it was going to go, keeping an idea of the house, was this here. I started out with a square block to scale that was actually, in this case, about 1.5 inches square, and laid it out as I would the large piece, which was 10 feet long and 10 inches square, and began to carve it out. The piece represents, to me, I guess, in the simplest way, represents growth, evolvement, and relating very much to the floral world. It's an organic piece. The bottom is an 8-sided form, and that represents the molecular stage. The basic form of the house, of the addition on the house, is also based on these 8-sided forms. So that's I drew from that very directly, and its placement is at a corner of an 8-sided form, which works out to an 135-degree angle. So that's what I was playing on. From that, I go into this sort of cylindrical pod-like form, which is the seed. And I made some changes when I was carving, when I got to that point. The original idea of having it open up in this tree-like form coming out didn't work out visually or practically when I was at that point carving it. So I eliminated it and just went from a sphere to this 4-sided twisted form. The twist represents the actual growth, and it starts out as a 4-sided, very simple 4-sided piece form, and then evolving into this twisted bulging stage, and then coming back in on itself to form each one of these sides forming an independent branch, so to speak, and then having that branch come out into a leaf. So I was trying to throw a lot of things into this piece, at the same time keeping it simple, keeping it playful, but somewhat serious too. The next phase after that, again, the time was such that I had some playtime, maybe about a month or so. I was wrapping up some other commissions and also waiting on the wood to arrive, which I ordered from, at that point, I'd already ordered from a friend of mine in the Bay Area, and the wood came down from Northern California, so it was fairly fresh and actually ordered right off the mill. Each one of these logs initially weighed somewhere in the neighborhood of 350 pounds. So obviously it's not the kind of thing you want to move around too much. And after getting them in place on the lathe, the first thing was to work it into a cylinder. And using a skill saw, I knocked off the corners and eventually made it to an 8-sided form, which was very close to a cylinder, and then planed it down as closely as I could to a cylinder. After having a cylinder which was about 4 feet long, I then laid out my spiral lines and, with chalk and with the string. And at that point, I was ready to start carving. Most of my work is what I call additive. I'm building up. It's mostly based on dimensional type furniture. Tables, cabinets, whatever. And even the art pieces I've done, the sculptures that I've done, still draw from much of that experience. Working with different materials, plywoods, etc., as much as I can with hardwoods, but building it up, starting out with a plank of wood and machining it and sanding it and whatever to get it into a shape or form or function that I want it to be. This piece is very much a traditional subtractive sculpture, just carving. And though I've done some carving, most of it has been on a smaller scale, with the exception of a pair of carved lion heads I did the year before, which I suppose led into this project. The bottom end was narrower than the midsection, and I started carving down towards that. First with a V-gouge, going through going right along those spiral lines, now creating, eliminating the chalk line with an actual carved line, and then working 2 sides at a time, working in section maybe up to 18 inches at a time, and then working with my various gouges, the wider scoop gouges, and then working the wood down towards a spiral. It very quickly began to define itself as a spiral. It was rough, and I didn't concern myself with getting finished carving marks, obviously, at that point. The main thing was to get it down to its rough shape. Many hours were involved in that whole process. From this point on, it was just it's strictly handwork, strictly hand carving. On this piece, I wanted fairly shallow cuts, fairly shallow scoops, and especially on the main section. I just wanted many facets, as many flat facets as possible. And again, at that, I was working with a very sharp number 3 and number 2 scoop. And throughout the whole thing, I think I've averaged maybe using 6 different type chisels, from flats to skews, skews being an angled chisel, to the V-groove, and and also during this I realized the need of other chisels for future carving, because you work very closely with the curvature chisel, making the chisel do as much work for you as possible. The actual physical labor part has taken about 3 solid months. Probably twice the amount that I originally estimated. But the important thing is the process and the project itself. When I become obsessed with it, I have an idea and then I make an idea happen into a three-dimensional thing that people can touch and see and measure against or whatever. But it's there. It's no longer just an idea trying to explain, out of my head that I can't even explain half the time. And to see it actually there, that becomes I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. There's a lot of wealth I feel I have from that. I draw my my information, my ideas from many sources. I'm not the most original thinker, and I don't know if my original thoughts really work out that well. However, there's a long history of things around us, both man-made, both existing in nature, that I draw from. I draw very much from that in these columns. And working with the client, especially in initial phases, in finding out what their ideas are. They're very valid, and oftentimes that's what opens me up to explore my ideas or to work on those ideas that they have and hopefully that's what they're hiring me for. Not to, let's say, reproduce something. That's not what I want to do, and that's not what I do. But to expand on another idea. If one of my ideas work out, then fine, but I'm more than willing and happy to work with them and anyone else that works, that comes along, because the important thing is the final piece itself, that it works, that it's good, that I'm happy with it, they're happy with it, and other people can say, well, you did it again.